Following last week's massive HBO Max news dump, a new streaming service has revealed a slate of new content. Paramount Plus is an upcoming rebranded version of CBS All Access. Paramount is a company owned by Viacom. Viacom is the parent company for many TV channels such as Nickelodeon, MTV, and Comedy Central. So that's what our big news is here. Paramount Plus will be the new home for Nickelodeon content, the same way that HBO Max is the new home for Cartoon Network content. Paramount put out a huge tweet thread announcing a ton of new projects coming to the service. So let's talk about some of this news, or at least primarily the ones that appeal most to cartoon fans. The biggest news that you've probably already heard is that Nickelodeon has formed a new studio dedicated entirely to producing new content for the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. The original creators of the series are now heavily involved in the studio, and they will be producing new shorts, spin-off shows, and theatrical films. That's pretty crazy. Notice too that they specifically say spin-offs and films, plural. They have some huge plans for this franchise. This is a huge surprise, and as far as I can tell, this kind of came completely out of nowhere. Though this is where I have to admit that I'm a bit of a fake cartoon fan. I never watched all of the Avatar series. My sister and I were big into it when it first came out, but then they advertised the finale, so I watched that and then I was like, okay, the show's over. But the show kept going after what I thought was the final episode, and it turns out that what I actually watched was the finale for book 1, not the ending of the whole show. Now keep in mind that I was like 6 years old at this time. Wait, the show's that old? But yeah, I was young, so I didn't understand the concept of shows having seasons, or even the concept of shows having like a continuity. So yeah, I never got around to watching the entire show. And even if I did, I would have been a kid. I don't really know how much of an impression it would have left on me. But it looks like with all this new content coming, I'm definitely going to have to check out the series soon. As far as I can tell from this new announcement, all the upcoming Avatar content will be animated, including the movies, which is insane. Let's hope and pray that the movies are 2D animated. Imagine getting a Western 2D animated theatrical movie in the 2020s. What a dream that would be. No news on release dates for any of this content, so I would assume it's probably a while off, maybe late 2022, or maybe even a lot of this content would be in 2023. And remember Netflix was making a live-action Avatar miniseries? As far as I know, that's a thing that's still happening, but it's going to stay on Netflix. The original creators of the series were actually working on that live-action show, but they just straight up left the project because it was turning out to be really bad. So like, maybe they started this new Avatar studio to finally do the series some justice, in a big way, with all sorts of different content. I don't know much about Avatar, everybody kind of just puts it on a high pedestal, but the merch for it must be really successful or something for this to suddenly happen. Like, I'm curious why Nickelodeon would pick this out of all shows to give such a strong treatment. I'm sort of curious that they aren't reviving even more shows to Paramount Plus in the same way. In fact, they're only reviving one other show, in animated form anyways. You would think starting up a new streaming service like this would be an amazing new time to make some more reboots. Like, maybe specifically Invader Zim, given how successful and well received the Netflix movie for that did. But nope, the only other animated Nickelodeon reboot we're getting is Rugrats. A CGI animated Rugrats series will be on Paramount Plus. I believe they were working on a live-action Rugrats thing too, but that is still in the works or something. The original voice cast is returning for this new animated series, and I don't know, it looks alright. They posted a short clip from it. They definitely could have given it a more stylized look, I think. The lighting in particular seems weird, like it's so strong, everything looks really dark. For a show like this, it should be focused on just like having an art style that emphasizes how big everything is from a baby's perspective, but I don't know, it looked like all the furniture and stuff was like about the same size as the characters, like it just seemed a little weird. The show's original style is really wonky, but like in a charming and very deliberate way. So I'm surprised they didn't just keep this 2D, or at least try really hard to recapture that original style. Kind of just looks like they just made it CG without thinking much about giving it a style. Now we might not think about it, but Rugrats was a really big Nickelodeon property. It had huge merch sales, a bunch of spin-offs and movies. It makes sense that they'd want to bring it back, but I don't really know if anyone out there is really actually excited for this. Rugrats is one of those things that just kind of exists in my mind, you know? There's nothing really outstanding about it as a whole aside from nostalgia. It's not like it needed to come back at all, you know? Like it had a really big run. There's not more you could do with Rugrats. Although I can say that the Rugrats movies are pretty good. The Rugrats in Paris movie brings a lot of feels, and the animation in all three of those movies is really great too. Moving on, this is very old news, but the third SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, will premiere on Paramount Plus, even though it was released in August in every other country aside from America. So everyone who is interested in it has probably already seen it through legal or illegal means. Pretty certain that it's actually on Netflix in other countries. Just the US is having it locked on this new service, which is unfair, but that's capitalism, I guess. Apparently, according to many people, the movie is not even that good. But I want to give it a chance. I'll probably buy a month of Paramount Plus just to check this movie out. It's a real big shame that we didn't get to see this in theaters because the animation does look pretty great. I mean, I remember seeing the trailer in theaters, so it's just weird that we're not going to be able to see the movie in theaters. Along with this movie comes the SpongeBob prequel spin-off series, Kamp Koral. This is a controversial thing since the original creator of SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg, never wanted there to be spin-offs, and now there's one right here. They've posted some clips from it, and everyone kind of agrees that it looks pretty bad, visually anyways. It just seems super unpolished, like it looks more like a Nick Jr. type of show where they didn't have to put in that much work into the animation because they're just focused on the content or something. But even just overall, a show like this is totally unnecessary and it messes with the SpongeBob storyline like a lot. Like, come on, he didn't meet Sandy until the second episode of the show. What are you people doing? I feel like, especially given the way the show looks, it was probably rushed out really quickly just so they could have something exclusive for the streaming service. If you're someone who doesn't want to support it, then just don't watch it or think about it and it'll probably go away. Now those three are what I consider the big announcements here, but there is a lot of other news to go through too, so let's be quick and talk about what might appeal to us cartoon and video game fans. Star Trek Prodigy is a new animated Star Trek series by Nickelodeon. This has been in development for quite some time, but I guess now it finally has a home and some visuals and stuff for us to see. Star Trek Lower Decks, which is the Rick and Morty styled adult comedy series, is also going to be on this streaming service. Paramount Plus really will just be a new home for a lot of Star Trek content, including I think new live action series and all the series that were on CBS All Access previously as well. So if you're a Star Trek fan, this is the place you want to be. I haven't seen much Star Trek, but I was a big fan of the recent trilogy of reboot movies. There's a live-action Dora the Explorer series in the works. Not sure if this is based on the recent live-action movie, or if it will just be like a cutesy Nick Jr. thing like the original show. I'm gonna doubt that it's gonna be based on the movie. It's probably gonna be more of its own thing. Also, apparently the animated Dora series is over. I don't even know if I knew that. I thought Dora would be one of those things that just went on forever like SpongeBob or The Simpsons, but I guess it's been over for a while. And this is a bit of yikes news, but Fairly Odd Parents is getting a live-action reboot series as well. Basically, no information about this came out, but I assume it'll be separate from the live-action movie series with Drake Bell. Like, this is probably just going to be another attempt at being live-action, but as a TV show instead of movies. This is a really weird one because Fairly Odd Parents lasted, like, forever. It does not need a reboot at all. Like, I don't know how much money this series makes or something, but Nickelodeon just seems to really love it. But that's pretty problematic because there's a lot of rightful controversy surrounding the show's creator, Butch Hartman. In fact, literally last week, there was like a huge trend of people hating on him because of various reasons that I don't really want to talk about. I don't like discussing negative things like this, but all you need to really know is that you should not support any future content that this man may be involved with. It seems like he's back at Nickelodeon to work on this new live-action series, so let's all forget that this new series is happening and try to let it disappear. Another reboot coming, sort of, is iCarly is getting a new season, which I would obviously assume is just the cast returning for like a new season. That's like a epilogue type of thing. This was announced a little while ago, but I never mentioned it in any of my videos. And apparently this series is coming this year, which is pretty neat. And if you didn't know, the creator of iCarly is also a very horrible person. And as far as I know, I don't think he's involved in this because Nickelodeon did like officially fire him. So this iCarly reboot is probably being handled by other people from the original show staff. Now this is a bit unrelated, but does anyone else remember when they made a Zoe 101 reunion short? Like they released that online and it ended on a cliffhanger that was saying there would be a part 2. And then they never made that part 2. Pretty sure there was a reason we never got that second part. Like probably related to Dan Schneider's controversy or maybe just something with the actors that I'm not sure about. But it is just so weird to me that that happened and it never got concluded and everybody seemed to just entirely forget about it. Like I remember people were really excited that that short came out, but then like everybody forgot. Like does anybody else remember that that was a thing that happened? And this is some more old news, but Beavis and Butthead is getting a reboot as well. Actually just a brand new movie, not a series. Halo, like the video game series, is getting a live action show. Apparently this was in development for a while, but now it finally has a home on Paramount Plus. Upcoming movies like the Clifford the Big Red Dog movie and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 will be on Paramount Plus after their theatrical runs. So a lot of Paramount's movies, including like their classic movie library, will end up on this service as well. And it's also important to note that a majority, if not all, Nickelodeon and Nick Jr. series will end up being streamable on this service in the future. The same way that many Cartoon Network shows are on HBO Max now. It might take some time for that to happen because the shows might be licensed out to other streaming services, but once those contracts end, they'll move the shows over to Paramount. And that's about all the news, related to reboots and animation anyways. There's a lot of other stuff about live action and sports, but I mean, I don't know, do we care? I'll link the Twitter thread in the description if you want to see all the stuff they announced. Paramount Plus will launch on March 4th, 2021 in the United States. And I'm pretty sure only in the United States. Keep in mind, in terms of Nickelodeon content, there are also a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie and a Loud House movie in development, but those are being made for Netflix. Those were likely started production before Viacom decided to try and make their own service. You know, because like the Rocco movie and the Zim movie ended up on Netflix, so like they were probably trying to be buddy-buddy with Netflix for a little while there, but then they saw HBO Max happen with all Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers stuff, and honestly, Viacom is, I think, definitely just directly trying to copy HBO Max. Another important thing to mention here is that apparently, unlike HBO Max, most of the content that's coming to Paramount Plus will also air on TV, just a while after it debuts on the streaming service. It'll be on streaming first and then go to TV. So Kamp Koral and the Rugrats Reboot, for example, will end up airing on Nickelodeon as normal weekly TV shows at some point. And again, this streaming service is just in the US, I believe. It's possible this content will end up on TV or other streaming services like Netflix in other countries. That's what happened with HBO Max's content in other places anyways. Like Close Enough, for example, that was an HBO Max exclusive show in the US, but in other countries it aired on Adult Swim or is even just on Netflix. I guess it's a lot of work to localize a streaming service, apparently, because I still don't think HBO Max is even out in any other countries yet, and it's been out in the US for a whole year. So what do you guys think about all this news? Let me know in the comments. What excites you the most, or are you even possibly disappointed by some of this news? Personally, I kind of don't care. I grew up watching a lot of Nickelodeon, but now that I'm older, their content just doesn't really appeal to me that much. Both their new and classic stuff, I mean. I never really feel a need to even rewatch their older shows besides Invader Zim or Spongebob. I think those two shows are like hilarious and timeless, and Zim's a really important thing to me that pushed my creativity and stuff. So they just aren't really doing much with Paramount Plus right now that appeals to me. The Avatar news is super cool, but that's a while away, and I mean it's getting a theatrical movie, so it's not even like all of that content is only going to be on the service. I may have watched Nickelodeon much more than Cartoon Network when I was a very young kid, but now that I'm older, I think Cartoon Network's catalog appeals to me much more, both their classic shows and their new ones. Like, I would rather go back and rewatch Billy and Mandy than go back and rewatch Fairly Odd Parents. So I think I'll be sticking with HBO Max. Based on their news, it seems like they have a much more interesting future of content. And you could check out my video about that news if you haven't, if you want to know what's coming to that service soon too. Lots of surprises. Again, this is just a me thing probably, but I'm really surprised Paramount Plus isn't pushing to reboot even more Nickelodeon content. Invader Zim specifically. I think that would absolutely sell some subscriptions. Maybe the Zim crew just doesn't want to make more content or something? It just seems really weird, like there's shows like Hey Arnold or Jimmy Neutron that I think are more deserving of having reboots or additional seasons, and they're just kind of being ignored because they want to give Rugrats and Fairly Odd Parents more attention. Like, that's not gonna sell any subscriptions really, I don't think. Families and kids who end up having the service will end up watching those and liking them, I'm sure, but those aren't really exciting in the same way that something like Avatar is exciting. Or something like more seasons of Invader Zim would be exciting because Invader Zim was so short-lived and had so much untouched potential. Something like Fairly Odd Parents really does not need to return at all. Actually, if you didn't know, there is another reboot coming. Ren and Stimpy is getting a reboot for Comedy Central. I'm like 80% certain though that will probably pivot and become a Paramount Plus thing once it's ready to be released. But for now they're saying it's being made for Comedy Central on TV. If they can make that Ren and Stimpy series in that same sort of style the HBO Max Looney Tunes shorts have, then I will be super sold on it. Plus here's a third Nickelodeon creator who is a very bad person. The original creator of Ren and Stimpy is absolutely horrible, and He is not involved in this reboot at all, and he will not be making any profit off of it at all, which is very cool. So hopefully they're doing that same thing with iCarly, and I guess unfortunately they're not doing that with the Fairly Odd Parents thing. But anyways, there are my thoughts. Whew, I said like way more than I expected to. Once again, let me know your thoughts about this news, and thank you for watching. Please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to know when I post new videos. Thanks for watching, and super special thanks to my Patreon supporters. Support me on Patreon and you'll be able to submit video topics, see exclusive behind the scenes content, and help me keep this channel going. Also follow me on Twitter and TikTok for special updates.